Our morning worship message title today is A Great Prophet Has Risen Up. This is a King James translation of Luke 7. And so I like the King James translation, the translation that our other passage doesn't have it quite as powerful as this. So the title of the message is King James, but you'll see that the content of the message is more modern English. If you'll read this passage in Luke 7, 1 through 17, quietly as I read it aloud. Not long after that, Jesus went to the village of Nain. His disciples were with him, along with quite a large crowd. You remember there was a lot of women that paid, rich women that paid for their lodging and paid for their food. And then there was other people that just wanted to be with Jesus. So quite a large crowd was with Jesus and his disciples as they approached the village gate of the village of Nain. They met a funeral procession. The woman's only son, a widow lady's only son, was being carried out for burial. And the mother was a widow, and when Jesus saw her, his heart broke. Jesus' heart broke. And Jesus said to her, "Don't cry." Then he went over and touched the coffin. The pallbearers stopped. Jesus said, "Young man, I tell you, get up." The dead son sat up and began talking. Jesus presented him to his mother. Can you imagine if you were there? They all realized they were in a place of holy mystery. God was at work among them. They were quietly worshipful and then noisily grateful, calling out among themselves, "A great prophet has risen up." Or as this modern translation said, God is back, looking to the needs of his people. The news of Jesus spread all through the country. I have never had a better elder's presentation of anything I've ever said in the scriptures than our elder gave this morning. Our elder this morning, Shirley, pointed out that Luke was the one who really mentioned these miracles like this in the Gospels. And I want to remind you, this is a major theme in my book on Paul, which was just published, that Luke was a doctor. The Gospel of Luke has the best Greek of any of the four Gospels. A little humorous story, the Gospel of Mark is terrible Greek. Verb tenses are wrong, words are spelled wrong, incomplete thoughts. It's obvious that whoever wrote the book of Mark, Greek was the second language. I speak Spanish and I read Spanish, but if I wrote a gospel, it would be like Mark. My verb tenses in Spanish would be wrong, but you could figure it out, you know. My spellings of certain Spanish words would not be correct. And that's how the Gospel of Mark is. But the Gospel of Luke is a masterpiece in Greek language. Luke was a Greek physician. There's all kinds of medical words in Greek. So, being a doctor, when these miracles took place, it had a special interest. And Shirley this morning mentioned 3 different times when Jesus raised people from the dead. Now, a week or two ago, I mentioned, and again, this is a little humorous, when this happens today in this country, we have a lot of medical terms, and so miracles in medical terminology are spontaneous remissions. They died, but they spontaneously revived. Well, Our society tends to be real scientific and real logical, and so we don't have any place in our society for miracles. But in a society where there was a lot more superstition, a lot less medical knowledge, a lot less logical knowledge, really, miracles took place. They're actually taking place today, too. Every healing, every miracle in the Gospels is happening today. But we try to explain it away in the 21st century. And again, these things don't happen very often at all. In Jesus' ministry, somebody raised from the dead just happened intermittently. But it happened. And really, in the 21st century, I know I'm speaking to a lot of logical people, this still happens. I have a real close friend. I've watched him go from drinking from the age of 16 to drinking to the age of 62. The first few times I met with my friend, he was so drunk that the next session he couldn't remember what we talked about in the first session. But I knew he wouldn't keep coming back to me if he didn't want to be free from alcohol. He was an agnostic 2 years ago, but he knew he was going to die. And so when he finally wanted to quit, I called up his brother and said, listen, if you don't get this guy into medical detox from alcohol, he's going to die. There's only 2 types of withdrawal from drugs that will kill you. One is benzos, things like Xanax and other benzos. If you've been abusing those things and you cold turkey, you're going to die. A lot of people die in our jails and prisons. They get DUIs, they come in drunk. The guards don't know that alcohol withdrawal will kill you. These people will fall down on the floor, start having convulsions. The guards will laugh, not realizing that they're dying. A lot of people die in our jails from alcohol detox. So I called his brother and said, listen, this person, your brother, needs a medical detox. They need to be medically walked down or they are going to die. And God bless his brother, he had to look everywhere. Finally found a place in Kansas City that would medically detox him. Isn't that sad? There's no place in Kansas that will medically detox you? Something's wrong, something's wrong. But that's a secondary point. So my friend goes from agnosticism to believing in God to actually attending a church where they talk about Jesus occasionally. Imagine that. But he has a hard time with things like this. And so it was real fun working with him just in the last few weeks and watching him come to a belief in God. But I talked to him last week and he said, there's only 2 places in the entire Bible that says God is love. Those 3 words, God is love. But look at Jesus' life. And so, of course, you know me, I wasn't bashful. I said, yeah, those 3 magical words may not be only 3 places in the Bible, but look at his life. And I mentioned this passage here. Jesus saw the widow lady. He was told that this was her only son. The funeral procession was going to bury her only son. She would have no support. She'd be totally alone, totally penniless, no food, no lodging, no nothing. Jesus' heart broke. When you're a doctor like Luke, and you watch people's heart break? When you're a nurse and you're watching people die, if you're a good doctor or you're a good nurse, your heart breaks. You don't get calloused at all. Jesus' heart broke. Of course, the three words, God is love, are not here. A God who is love is here. A Son of the living God. His heart breaks for you and me. You and I, before we knew God, were dead. Our bodies were alive, but we didn't realize that every heartbeat we have is a gift from God. Every breath of air we take is a gift from God. We didn't realize it, and we were dead spiritually without Jesus in our heart. You and I used to be this young man. Now, children are given a lot of love in a good home. And so every one of us got enough love to survive. Now, I want to explain to you something about love. If babies are not held, if babies are not talked to, if babies don't have somebody look them in the eyes, even though they have plenty of food, they have their diapers changed, and the room is warm enough, they will die. It's called failure to thrive. That every one of you that hear my words today, that means that somebody held you, somebody looked you in the eyes and talked to you, and somebody loved you, or you would have failure to thrive. And you would have died as a baby, a newborn baby. But there's many people that got just barely enough love, just barely enough eye contact, just barely enough to survive, but as an adult they're not thriving. I've never read this in any psychological books, but I call it adult failure to thrive syndrome. It is our mission as Christians, these people that are just barely alive, to tell them about God's love. Other people got plenty of love and everything, but they've never connected it to their faith in God. This passage here is wonderful for that connection. Jesus' heart broke when he saw that widow lady. Jesus' heart broke for you and me when we were far from him. And let me tell you, every human being, I don't care how they're raised, spiritually, non-spiritually, church or unchurched, from time to time, every one of us has been far from God. And when that happens, Jesus doesn't judge us. Jesus' heart breaks. And Jesus said to her, don't cry. Jesus is saying to you right now, no matter what you're going through, stop crying. I'm here. I'm going to help you. Whatever's dead in your life, I'll make come alive. Jesus is with you just as much as he was with this widow lady and her dead son. And really, Jesus says to each one of us, young man, I tell you, young woman, I tell you, get up. And the dead son sat up and began talking. There was no question to anybody in that coffin assembly, where the young man's coffin was there, that he was dead. There was no question about it. No heartbeat. Stiff. Dead. And that's what you and I are without God. We're empty. And he sat up and began talking. Can you imagine the joy of his mother? Oh my goodness, I wish I could see her face. First, it would be like, this can't be happening. And second, it'd be like, this is too wonderful to be true. And notice what happened. They all realized they were in a place of holy mystery. Whenever I watch somebody come to a faith in God like my friend, drinking from age 16 to 62, an agnostic at the very least, an atheist at the most, watching somebody come alive like that, oh my goodness. It's beyond belief. And at first, it's so wonderful, there's nothing you can say. They all realized they were in a place of holy mystery. God was at work among them, and they were quietly worshipful. When great things happen like that, it's too good beyond words. But once you realize how great it was, then you begin getting excited. A great prophet has risen up. God is back, looking to the needs of his people. And I want to tell you, no matter what you're going through today with COVID or the elections or personal issues like Nehemiah, God is back, and he's meeting the needs of you if you will reach out to God. He's actually meeting your needs to you even when you don't reach out to God. But when you reach out to God, you'll see these things begin to happen in your life. You'll see that you're led to the right people at the right time at the right place. You'll see that through other people and through circumstances and everything else, God is meeting your needs. And what's the next step? You'll naturally want to tell other people about it. The news of Jesus spread all through the country. Can you imagine how many missionaries from the little village of Nain went out and talked to all their relatives in Israel? Israel's a small country. This thing is still happening in Israel. When something good happens to somebody in Israel, they go out and tell all their friends. Well, everybody's related. It's like a small Kansas town. Everybody's related, and so everybody shares it. And even if you're not a direct relationship to that person, you're all excited about it. And this is another really important thing in this passage here. Jews did not murder Jesus on the cross. Jews were like these people in the village of Nain. They were excited out of their minds that a prophet had arisen in Israel, and he was like Elijah. Elijah raised people from the dead too. And Elijah's my favorite Hebrew prophet because Jesus is Elijah, if you read the Hebrew and Christian scriptures carefully. Although he's the Son of God, he's much more than Elijah. But God will take your life, and no matter what's going on with you today, he can raise that part of your life from the dead. Now, God won't always do it exactly like we want. God is full of surprises, good surprises, wonderful surprises. But you can have this incredible joy that this widow had. You can have this incredible excitement that the people in that village have. And you can spread it. And, the Bible is not a book of fairy tales. The Bible is the lives of actual people who lived. And you and I are the spiritual descendants of all those people in the village of Nain. I don't know about you, but I have seen a lot of things answered by prayer that simply don't happen naturally. But God is not into the Hollywood business. He's not real flamboyant about all these things. Notice where Jesus is. This did not happen in the middle of Jerusalem. It did not happen in any major city. It happened in a small village called Nain. Jesus could have healed somebody in Jerusalem like this, but God chose to heal a poor widow's son in a poor village. So God is tremendously at work today in our nation, in our world. Sometimes God says no to you to say yes to you. If you feel like God is saying no to you today, and something has died in your life, I'd encourage you in the name of Jesus just to sit around with faith in God and wait. God will bring things in your life that you just can't believe are going to happen. They won't necessarily be what you want, but they will always be what you need. And you know, God is like Jesus. God really is love. You know, these meditations I'm sending out, you won't fully ever understand them if you don't realize that every time you mention the word God as a Christian, you're saying love. And every time you say love as a Christian in a Christian context, you're saying God. So let me encourage you to just be filled with faith, filled with love, filled with God. Be like the widow. Be like the young man set up and come alive. Be like the people around that young man who saw Jesus raise this young man from the dead. Amen.